What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel. We've got our Week 8 power rankings now as we head into Week 8 of the 2019 college football season. It was probably the most significant week we have seen in the SEC so far this season. LSU's big win over Florida. Alabama rolled over Texas A&M. Of course, the huge upset, South Carolina beating Georgia. Tennessee gets their first win in the SEC. Just a lot of stuff going on in the conference this past weekend. This next week might be a little bit quieter. We'll see. But let's get into our power rankings, starting with number 14. That is Arkansas. They remain at the bottom. Put up a good fight against Kentucky, and this team's getting better. They've had a chance to beat Texas A&M. They played Kentucky to a one-possession game. But as of now, they just can't get over the hump. They're still 0-3 in the SEC, and to me, this team still has to stay at the bottom. But just based off of what we have seen the last couple of games, I'm close to putting Arkansas actually at number 13, because our number 13 team has looked absolutely awful. They have one win on the season, and again, you can make a case for Arkansas going to number 13, but for now, we're going to keep them at 14, and we're going to put Vanderbilt at number 13. They are 0-3 in the conference, just 1-5 overall. They didn't have a bad loss until this game against UNLV. So which loss is worse, UNLV or San Jose State? You could put these teams tied at number 13, Vanderbilt and Arkansas. It's very, very close. But for now, we're going to go with Vanderbilt here, especially if you go back to last year, Arkansas. I mean, how many SEC games have they lost in a row now? I don't even know the number. I think they might get one, though. I think Arkansas might get somebody this season. But Vanderbilt, for me, they got a lot of work to do, and they are at number 13. Mississippi State down to number 12. What is going on with this team? Had a little bit of hype coming into this season. They lose that game to Kansas State. They were destroyed by Auburn. Now they lose to Tennessee, a Tennessee team that had not won a conference game yet this year. Mississippi State definitely trending down right now, just 1-2 in the SEC. They do have that one conference win over Kentucky. Looking back, that was a big win for them, because the way it's looking now, this team might struggle just to get to a bowl game. And this was a Mississippi State team that was in a lot of people's preseason top 25 polls. So we'll see if they can get things turned around. The team that just beat them is Tennessee. I bumped them up to number 11. Not just the win here over Mississippi State, but, they lost a close game to BYU. They've been somewhat competitive in their last few games. So I'm going to give them a little bit of credit for that. And then finally getting over the hump here and beating Mississippi State. They are 2-4 now on the season. Could be 3-3. Again, they really blew that game against BYU. So a very nice win for them to beat Mississippi State. We'll see if they can continue to build on that. Jarrett Guarantano coming in the second half of that game for them really gave them a boost. I'm assuming they're going to go back to him now, and maybe he will start to play better. Number 10 is Kentucky. They are 3-3 on the season, 1-3 in the conference. They finally got a conference win. I'm going to give them a little bit of credit for doing what they've done with the injuries. Terry Wilson going down, and then they wind up putting Lynn Bowden at quarterback. He's a wide receiver, putting him at quarterback. He actually did pretty well in the game. Had 196 yards rushing. Getting an athlete back there, it made a difference for them, and they looked pretty solid against Arkansas. I know Arkansas hasn't been great this year, but still, Kentucky got that win. I would understand if you wanted to make the argument that Mississippi State should be ahead of Kentucky because they beat them head-to-head. But the way they played recently, I think you have to give Kentucky the nod there. And again, Tennessee in between those two teams. Number 9 is Ole Miss. They've been playing some good football, put up a good fight against Missouri this past weekend. This might be the best 3-4 team in the country when you look at the teams that they've lost to and just the way that they've started to play. This team looking pretty good. John Rice Plumlee had 143 yards rushing. He's really added a dimension with the quarterback being able to run. That's something they didn't have before, and that has been big for them. They were competitive against Missouri, couldn't quite get the win, but still, this is a good football team. Watch out for them to maybe pull off an upset somewhere down the stretch here. Number 8 is Texas A&M. They fall to 3-3, and again, I don't want to say I told you so, but a lot of people were hyping this team up to be a top 10 team, and I said in the preseason, this is not a top 10 team. They just lost too much. I thought they would probably finish in the top 25, and they still can. I mean, they've had a brutal schedule. Yes, they're 3-3, but again, the schedule's been really tough for them. They lose to Alabama, but they showed some good fight in this game. The offense actually played pretty well for the Aggies. They gave up 47 points, but I don't know if anybody can slow down Alabama, and they just didn't have enough offensively. So, yes, they're 3-3, but I still think this is a pretty good team. South Carolina at number 7, of course, coming off the huge upset win over Georgia. What's going on here? How did they do this? Well, you talk about Texas A&M having a tough schedule. South Carolina's had a really tough schedule as well. They are 2-2 though in the conference now with a win over Kentucky, win over Georgia. They've had a brutal schedule. That's really all it is. This is a good football team. That defense played really well against Georgia, really on both sides of the ball, on the offensive and defensive lines. South Carolina looked like they could match Georgia in this game, and Ryan Helinski played really well before he went out with the injury. I think they've really found a future superstar in him at quarterback. So big win for South Carolina, a season-changing win. Missouri is at number 6. They roll over Ole Miss. This team just continues to win. Now, I do penalize them still a little bit for losing to Wyoming in week 1. That's why they're not quite in the top 5 just yet. And they haven't beaten any real good teams. But those games are going to come, and we're going to find out if Missouri is the real deal. They've been able to pass every test since that Wyoming loss. Kelly Bryant has played well for them at quarterback. A lot of people wondered, how he was going to do as a passer. We threw for over 300 yards in this game, and he has played really, really well for Missouri. Number 5 is Georgia. They are on their way down after an upset loss to South Carolina. This team now 5-1 in the season, 2-1 in conference play. Just an awful performance, honestly, by Georgia. Jake Fromm didn't play very well in this one. They couldn't run the football that well. The turnovers killed them. Defensively, they couldn't stop the South Carolina run game. They gave some big plays in the passing game as well. This team just doesn't look like a top 5 team to me right now. Look at the early parts of the Tennessee game even. This team struggled. So what's going on with Georgia? I don't know. There's still plenty of time to get it fixed. But for now, we're going to put them at number 5 because of that Notre Dame win. If they hadn't beat Notre Dame, I think I might even have Missouri ahead of Georgia at this point. Number 4 is Auburn. They had a bye week this past weekend. But one thing I would take away from what happened this weekend that I could relate to Auburn is how good their defense is, because you saw Florida go up and down the field on LSU, and Auburn's defense really clamped down on Florida in the swamp. Again, I mentioned this last week. You take out those 2 long touchdown plays, and Florida only scores 10 points in that game. And those were just a couple of busted plays there, missed tackles, busted coverage. This defense really, really good for Auburn. I still don't know if they can compete with those top teams in the SEC. We're going to find out. And maybe they can, because it's looking like Florida is one of those top teams. Even though they lost to LSU, I was really impressed with this team in this game. What I just talked about, their offense going up against a very talented LSU defense. I know the defense hasn't been great for the Tigers. Statistically, they're not great. But this is still a very talented defense. And Florida, especially in the first half, just did whatever they wanted offensively. Now, the defense got exposed a little bit, but I think that's just because LSU's offense is that good. I still think Florida has a really good defense. And this, to me, is a top 10 team. I think they proved it against LSU. Even though they lost, I was impressed by their performance in Death Valley. Alabama at number 2. They are 6-0, 3-0 in the SEC. They roll over Texas A&M. But again, they give up some points, and this is just not what we're used to seeing from Nick Saban's defenses at Alabama. They have not been that great on that side of the ball, and a lot of that might have to do with injuries. They lost some guys before the season even started. They have some other players banged up. I don't know what the deal is there, but the offense is going to carry them, and they don't have to shut teams out. They're going to score 40, 50 points pretty much every single game. So it's really just not that big of a deal, and they're good enough, I think, to beat the top teams. But you look at LSU, they're kind of a mirror image of Alabama. Both teams have been so explosive on offense, both teams not living up to their normal standard on defense, and that's been the case for LSU. So if you want to put Alabama number 1, LSU number 2, I'd be fine with that. But you go to the resume, and that's really not what this is about. But if we're trying to separate the teams, I think we can look at that. And you look at LSU, they beat Texas, they beat Florida. Alabama doesn't even have a top 25 win right now. So LSU to me still has to stay at that number 1 spot. Very impressed with what they did against a really good Florida defense. And you saw in the second half the defense for LSU really picked things up, played really well in the red zone, created a turnover. If they can play like that on defense with this offense, this team can win a national championship this year. And, of course, they can win an SEC championship. It's going to be a big test, though, on the road in Tuscaloosa against the Crimson Tide. Those are my power rankings heading into Week 8. I would love to get your power rankings down in the comments below, or just tell me what you liked or didn't like about mine. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports SEC Football Channel.